So welcome back to this little two-part mini-series travel log heading up through the Outer Hebrides. And if you remember from last week's video, I'll put a link up there somewhere, we left it just as we were about to cross over onto North Uist. So today we'll pick that up and we'll look at North Uist. We'll come through onto Benbecula before heading across onto Harris and up until Lewis. And as I said last week, all of these photos taken with the iPhone, so rather than it being sort of polished photos, it's more of a little travelogue series that hopefully will give you a bit of a taste of what the Outer Hebrides has to offer once we get let out of this lockdown and can go play a game. Right, enough jibber jabber, on with the video, heading over to North Uist. Hope you enjoy. So one of the things that you'll notice looking at this satellite view of Benbecula is very much the east-west divide going on here. So on the eastern side of the island is very much peppered with a lot of these sea lochs, and in fact if we pop across to our photographs, you can actually see that in evidence here. So let's just go into full screen. So we actually climbed up the highest point in Benbecula, not that high, but it was fantastic to see those little sort of sea lochs, and in fact there is an official trail that you can go out and walk and explore some of these sea lochs as well. Now we actually had some phenomenal views of some golden eagles while we were up here, and because we were already up at a little bit of a height, they were probably only about 30 or 40 foot above our head, so that was pretty cool to see. So we left Benbecula, went across one of those little causeways and ended up in North Uist, and we made our way along on the western side towards a little beach, and such beautiful conditions and a wonderful beach as well. And in fact, apart from another 4x4 truck, which you can just about see here, this is our camper van here, a little truck camper, we were pretty much by ourselves. And in fact, this truck camper, we seemed to kind of come across it. We never got to speak to the guys who were driving it. I think they were maybe from Germany, but we were pretty much the only ones around here, and this beach was beautiful. And you can see the conditions that we were met with when we arrived, some beautiful late evening Hebridean sun. It was more the patterns on the beach that really drew my eye here. Now I'm going to hold my hands up and say I did not make the most use of my time on this beach. The patterns were fantastic. The patterns made by the outgoing tide, black silt in the sand, the pebbles, the patterns in the geology in the rocks, the seaweed, absolutely stunning. And I know looking back now through my images that I don't think I made the best time, and if and when we do head back over to the Outer Hebrides, this is certainly an area that I would like to spend a lot more time at. So this is us now making our way along the western side of the south of North Uist, if you can keep up with me. And we ended up stopping off at a campsite, RSPB Balnarad, I think is how you pronounce it. Yeah, so Balnarad Nature Reserve. So you can actually, there is actually an official campsite here, and the fantastic thing about the campsite is you are literally in this little bay here. So we ended up parking up there, I think, for 2, maybe 3 nights, and using this as a little bit of a base for a bit of wildlife watching and obviously a little bit of landscape photography. So the campsite itself is literally just on this right hand side, so there's lots of walks that you can do here. Now we got some fantastic light, absolutely beautiful, freezing cold, quite windy, but just the sorts of conditions that as a photographer you love to be out in. And in fact this is just a little one of those iPhone kind of live photos. It's just a bit of a, you can see, hopefully you can see that driving rain driving in, but hopefully you can also see the stunning light. And it was, the morning here was probably some of the best light we had in the Outer Hebrides, but it was pretty cold. You can see that northerly wind blowing through here again, another one of those little iPhone loops. And this was actually another one of my favorite, well, this is one of the compositions from another one of my favorite images, just that lovely S curve of the dunes, which just so happened to be able to be lined up with the sort of the top of the S curve on the beach itself. So I was quite pleased with how that worked out, but let's face it, it was all about the light really. So I think I mentioned this in last week's video. One of the things I loved about visiting the lesser visited islands in the Outer Hebrides, and especially this time of year, was you came across scenes like this time and time again, completely pristine beaches. That certainly wasn't the case the further north you went to the more popular spots, so it was lovely to find little areas like this. And even on a day like this where the weather had maybe closed in a little bit more, there's still just something about that Hebridean light. Still on North Uist, we found another cracking little spot to hold up for a couple of days. Again, this is just amongst the dune systems, just a little bit, the little lay-by on the road. And just having this on your doorstep and, just that beautiful light. We're actually looking out towards the Harris Hills here. Just wonderful. So we now leave North Uist behind and we head up into Benbecula, because that's where we're going to get our ferry over to Harris. Just a little note, we actually ended up parked up down at the ferry terminal for one of the evenings, or for 2 of the evenings I think. The ferry wasn't running for a day because of the weather conditions, and we ended up just parked the van up here. We knew we weren't going to be bothered because the ferry wasn't running. We had access, as you can see, to rubbish, to a loo, and even watching some otters fish out here as well. So we now jump on the ferry and start to head across to Harris, and yet again met by a couple of rainbows, some beautiful conditions. This is our van down here. So landing on Harris, and once again we were met with some stunning light. Now we were on a bit of a time crunch here, so wasn't able to sort of do anything from a photographic point of view. You're just surrounded by conditions like this here. It's just, it's a photographer's dream. So we made our way up to Luskentar. Now Harris has got a little community trust going. They have 5 or 6 camp spots mostly around Luskentar, around the bay there, if you know the area, where for £5 a night you can actually park up your van. Now you don't get access to any amenities, but obviously you know then that you're not going to be bothered. So if I just scroll in here, I'll show you kind of one of the little areas that I'm talking about. So this is one of the areas here, and in fact we did park ourselves here a couple of times. It was a little bit more sheltered. There's another couple around the road that leads you down to Luskentar, but for £5 a night. And what we typically do when we go to Harris is we'll stay for, maybe not contiguous, but we'll stay for a number of nights on these little spots, and then at the end of it we'll total up everything, and then we'll just pay up at one of the community centres. This is one of those little spots that we're parked up at, and this is overlooking Luskentar. As you can see, some great weather coming in again. I actually, because I've been across to Harris now a number of times, of course, don't get me wrong, and I did spend a bit of time down at Luskentar, especially one morning, which we'll come to in a moment. But there was a little sort of stand of rocks along the coast here, and I really got transfixed by them. Now, I don't think I came away with anything worthwhile talking about from an image point of view, but there's certainly something in there that I'd like to go back to and photograph. And so for a number of evenings, rather than mornings as well, rather than going to the main honeypot locations, I would find myself kind of slipping and sliding over these rocks. And again, this was the view that we had from another one of those little community camp spots that you can park your van up for £5 a night. And in fact, here is our van parked up at one of those said spots. Again, this was another one of those mornings where just weather system after weather system just blew through. I'm not quite sure what Nicola's looking at here, but I'm more interested. I think I've got another image somewhere. This here, it's actually a bit more pronounced than another one of my images. It's almost like a little mini tornado-y, cyclone-y thing. Maybe a water spout or something, I'm not sure. Oh look, more rainbows. And again, this is one of those little community camping spots. So now we're down at Luskentar, and what was quite interesting was we had spent the previous 3.5 weeks pretty much just ourselves, visiting a number of locations and not really seeing too many other people. So the morning that I shot down at Luskentar, or one of the mornings I shot down at Luskentar, there is an area that you can actually park your van down there overnight. I think again it's £5 a night. It may be a little bit more expensive actually down there, but you have access to toilet, and of course you're then walking distance. But what we would normally do is we would park at one of the community spots and then drive into Luskentar. After I had been here for a couple of hours, went back to the van and was making a cup of tea, and a coach pulled in, and about 50, I want to say, photographers jumped out, and they all went scarpering for the dunes. So you can imagine that the chances of getting pristine, non-footprint, kind of bashed up dunes would have been gone for the day, or maybe a couple of days afterwards. So I was glad that I made it out to the dune system before this coachload of photographers came in. I'm there as well. They've got every right to be there as well, but just be aware it's a very popular location, and so you may not get that pristine look that you're going for, especially if you go in higher seasons. It is a stunning place. You know, it's a honeypot location for good reason. It is beautiful. You seem to have an abundance of composition choice. You have an abundance of outlooks. You have a whole range of different things, be it the abstracty, more minimalistic shots of something on the beach, right through to the grand vistas. And it's also, as Nicola is demonstrating here, a pretty good place to run. On one morning in particular, I had some phenomenal conditions coming through, just allowing for lots of sort of weather and elements to be illuminated on the horizon. And of course, you've got these lovely sort of wind-blown dunes, sand-covered dunes, really huge dunes as well, to explore. This is on the far end of the beach, but yeah, just wonderful. More rainbows. Oh look, more rainbows. And you can see the beach is vast. I mean, actually, if you walk around this corner and then on up here, this is actually what's going to take you up to that car park at Luscantar. This is at the far end of the beach. More rainbows. Oh look, more rainbows. So this is actually us now across the other side, looking over Sailbost. So again, the little community trust campsites that you can see, or that you can park at, located here. And this beach sort of winds all the way down round and back up towards Luscantar. This is probably one of the most famous outlooks on Harris. Plenty of people stop, like myself here, and get an image. All the way across the Outer Hebrides, you're spoilt for choice in regards to beach patterns. So if beach patterns are your thing, then it's certainly somewhere to really get your fix. I like this image, again, just made with the iPhone, just because it reminded me almost like a gathering of witches or something. With their broomsticks all in the air. Just some lovely kind of abstracty sort of beach tones and shapes, and of course shapes that are very transient, as they will disappear at the next high tide. So this is again one of the views from Luscantar out to Vatersay, and again just that little individual cloud helping to break up an otherwise quite bright clear sky. And as that tide goes out on Luscantar, you get some wonderful beach patterns, and again just some abstract work, just the sunshine rippling off the tidal pools that have been left behind. And again, coming away from those honeypot locations and just walking with the camera, just exploring the coastline, some beautiful rock formations, and again that late evening sun, although I did get hemmed in by a bunch of overzealous cows on this evening, so wasn't all stress-free. So we're leaving southern Harris behind, and just outside Tarbert, you hang a left as you're heading north, and you head down to Hushnish. Now it's a pretty interesting, we'll leave it at that, single track road down to Hushnish, but certainly worthwhile heading down. And if you're in a camper van, you can actually stay down at what they call the Hushnish Gateway. Now, what's interesting is if you look at the street view from 2009, obviously looks to be just a little toilet block that's there. I'll link a video above that shows you from our video from our travel series, and you can see how much they have invested in the gateway down there. So this is us parked up down at the Hushnish Gateway, and I think this area is fast becoming one of my favourite locations on Harris. It is absolutely beautiful, and we got some unseasonably warm weather, stunning conditions. We may or may not have done a little bit of skinny dipping, but moving quickly on. It's a wonderful location. Some of the rocks down there, of course, we had some wonderful light again, and again it's not really doesn't get a lot of footfall. It is a bit of a sort of hike down, and certainly would be something that you'd want to have the ability to stay down there. But if you do get the chance to visit, then please do. And please also make sure when you're using these community offered camping spots that you do pay the money. It's all run on an honesty perspective. Please make sure you're putting your the money in honestly. But yeah, it's just beautiful. And again, we had some really wonderful views of golden eagles while we were down here, including one that was just perched up on a rock for probably a good 5-10 minutes, and we had some really good views of it there. And again, just looking for some of those abstract details, just in the rock, just beautiful. It's not, when I first thought of the Outer Hebrides, this is not the type of image that I was ever presented with. I was presented with the typical Luscantire, Selbost, white sandy beaches, which, don't get me wrong, beautiful. But this is a whole side of Harris that I would love to explore more, so much more. We were there for a couple of days. I would love to spend a week down here and really just get out and explore more. Heading back across into Harris again, and we took the road, the Golden Road, even though this is in black and white. Every time I have been up and down the Golden Road, it's been pretty gnarly weather. I'm not sure whether that's a feature of it or not, but again, just thinking back to the different things that the Isle of Harris can offer, it's not just all about those white, pristine, sandy beaches. The Golden Road offers, again, so much opportunity to park up somewhere and get out and go for a couple of hours hike. Just beautiful, just really, really nice. And again, just some of those lesser spotted areas, or those lesser known areas. I think this was just outside of Tarbert, in fact. And that's one thing that I certainly will want to do if and when we do go back to the Outer Hebrides, is probably avoid Luscantire and Selbost completely, and instead spend most, if not all, of my time going back to some of these locations that really resonated with me. Moving further north into Harris, and we actually ended up climbing up Clisham, which is the highest point on Harris, I believe the highest point in the Outer Hebrides. And we had another stunning day, beautiful hike up, and such wonderful, wonderful views. I think we're actually looking down, I think this is out towards the Hushinish area, and so you can see this whole area around here to be explored off the beaten track. So we now jump up into Lewis, and we actually stopped up at the butt of Lewis, and we stopped there for one night. It was due to get quite stormy, and we discovered actually up in above the harbour there was a little sort of bring your own alcohol pizza place, and we went in and filled our faces, and this was a stunning pizza, black pudding and spicy chicken pizza. But the next morning we awoke to some seriously stormy conditions, and in fact there were some seriously stormy conditions for the next 2 or 3 days. Yeah, it was really just a kind of a hunker down in the van and don't do a lot. We visited a couple of the little craft stores, but generally it was just a case of hunkering down in the van. And to be fair, we didn't get a huge amount of bad weather, but I think when you're visiting the islands, I think you've got to accept that you are going to get some changeable conditions. And again, this is right up at the butt of Lewis. Okay, so here we are now on Dalmore Beach. And again, this is a lovely beach for some of those big rolling waves to come through. The Outer Hebrides is just peppered with these beaches where you could spend a whole day just exploring. We then crossed on to Great Burnouah, and this is actually down at Bosta Beach, which has a tide and time bell as well down there. And again, this is another fantastic beach and a fantastic location. Behind here is a whole bunch of little mini hills and cliffs to sort of go exploring, and it is another place where you have access to a loo, somewhere to park your van, and a little community honesty box to sort of pay a couple of pounds for the community. Now we're back on to Lewis again, and this is up to Mangrostra. I cannot pronounce it. Mangrostra Stand, and again, it's one of those locations where it's phenomenal to visit. But every time I've been here, and not surprisingly, it's been pretty horrific conditions from a wind perspective. So it can be very challenging to get anything meaningful from a photography point of view. Don't get me wrong, there's lots of images out there with, beautiful, beautiful images. But just every time I've been there, it's been crazy, crazy wind. But what an incredible outlook you actually have here. So certainly worth, and I think in one of our travel vlogs, you can sort of see the power of the wind. So this is us actually down now at Cliff Beach, and again another little community place that you can park up your van. And look at this, we're by ourselves again, and again we had the whole beach to ourselves that evening, and then the following morning. And in fact, the evening before, I had been out photographing this sort of little tidal outflow, and I actually had a little bit of a little bit of a moment, let's say, where I kind of had a real kind of appreciation as to how, first of all, how privileged I was that I was able to stand here, but also how fleeting our time is on this planet. It kind of really, this image has really meant a lot to me because of that feeling that I had just standing here. I'm not embarrassed to say that I shed a tear or two. Just that whole feeling of the privilege of being there, but also knowing that one day my footsteps will not walk on beaches such as this. And so really it's about making the most of my time here on this planet. Sorry for the bit of the heaviness there. Moving on. And again, just beautiful patterns. What really drew my eye to this, no pun intended, was the fact that I think it looks a bit like an eyelash. Just again, those lovely patterns on the beach. We went looking for a bothy in this location up at Mangorstra, and it's called the Eagle's Nest. Now it's run by, unlike other bothies where you can just turn up, this has got a little bit of a special story to it. It's actually as part of the Linda Norgrove Foundation, a lady who unfortunately was killed a number of years ago, and her parents have actually set up the foundation, and part of that there you can actually stay at the bothy. Now we didn't stay, but we certainly went out looking for it. Some stunning, and again this whole area, stunning environment to be just walking in. Huge sea cliffs, elements coming in almost minute by minute, big mountains in the backdrop, swell, huge waves crashing hundreds of feet below. An absolute, if you're into, I don't like to use the word epic because I do believe that it's overused, but if you're into epic locations, the north of Lewis, or this area in Lewis, is certainly the place for you. Now it took us a while to find it, but we did actually find the bothy. This is it here. And I have my friend, in fact Nicola even said herself that she would consider staying in that bothy, and I would love to go back and stay in this bothy for a night. This is across Scalpe, so we've actually come back down to Tarbert again, and we've crossed the little bridge across to Scalpe, so again another island, and we're now looking across on the mainland Scotland, and we started to kind of realise that our time in the Outer Hebrides was coming to an end. But not before we headed back to a little beach that we normally will go to on our last night on the Outer Hebrides. And this is Tolsta, which is just north of Stornoway. So of course it does give us an easy slingshot to go ahead and grab a ferry back across to the mainland from Stornoway. And again, it just is full of just both the bigger vista view, but also just lots of little patterns. And again, we had some stunning light, and this is where we parked up on our final night again in the Outer Hebrides. We then got the ferry back the following day from Stornoway to the mainland in Ullapool, and then we had another 6 weeks, I think 5 weeks, exploring mainland Scotland. But I guess that'll have to be a story for another vlog. I hope you've enjoyed this little mini series sort of walk through the Outer Hebrides. As I say, it's just meant to be a little sort of photo diary of our time. We did spend about 4.5-5 weeks in the Outer Hebrides between early October and early November, and I for one cannot wait to get out exploring again. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.